Thank you for joining us this morning. It is our 15th annual Economic Outlook. My name is Mike Rigolonis. I'm the COO here at the Chester County Economic Development Council. Appreciate all of you coming out this morning. In addition to being our Economic Outlook, it's also our Eagles Spirit Day here. I don't see as much green as I thought I would this morning, but our staff is mixing in some green. I see a few of you with your spirit going. So, a couple things this morning. First of all, we are really excited to have back with us again this year Patty Brennan, and Mary Frances will give you a more formal intro here in a minute. But I'll make you aware that Patty, this is our 15th annual, and Patty has been here for every single one of them. Great job for us. Do we have anybody that's here for the first time ever for the Outlook? Any first timers? All right, fair amount. So that's actually, I know a lot of you come back to see Patty every year, but there's a number of you that are in for a treat this morning. Patty does a great job, so we're looking forward to your comments, Patty. We also have a change in the program. We got an email last evening about 4:30 from our friends at JP Morgan Chase. Jim Glassman, who is the economist who's coming up from Virginia, reached out to Mary Frances and said he had a medical emergency, was literally on his way to the hospital, and is not here this morning. So, first of all, I hope he's doing better and hanging in there for Matt. I think he is doing a little bit better today than he was yesterday, so that's some good news. We scrambled around a little bit trying to figure out what we should do. So we came up with a little idea. Patty's still going to be the star of the show here, but staff, Gary Smith, I don't know if Gary's here just yet, but Gary will lead a brief staff presentation. We'll give you some perspectives from what we see, some of the trends we're seeing, some priorities for us for 2019, highlight some projects that either we're working on or we're aware of. So hopefully we'll give you some good local knowledge here this morning before you leave here as a little bit of, we'll try to replace a little bit what JP Morgan was going to do. And I also know that Patty's team scrambled yesterday. She had eliminated some duplicate slides and done some other stuff to leave the national perspective to Jim. So Patty has last minute thrown some stuff in there to give you some national perspective as well. So we're adjusting, we're nimble here at CCEDC, and we'll do the best that we can. I think that's it. Oh, the one thing I want to mention, and Gary is in the back here now, so I got a notice on my calendar this morning, my phone, everything, meetings pop up and whatnot. I got a notice that Gary's 43rd anniversary at CCEDC is tomorrow. So you hear more from Gary here after Patty. So, Mary Fran, you want to do the...
Sure, I thought you wanted to do something more about CCEDC.
Well, I was, but we're doing that at the end.
At the end?
So
Okay,
instead
great.
of repeating.
Great, good idea. Again, we're nimble, right? So again, thanks for joining us this morning. Many of you who have been in the room and have seen Patty before, you understand that she is acclaimed by Barron's and Forbes alike, and she's moving on to bigger and better things. She even has her own podcast now. Pretty soon, everybody's going to know about Westchester, and if they don't already, they're going to know about Patty Brennan and how wonderful she is. But I just wanted to give you just a little personal connection to Pat, and I get a little choked up because it's a little emotional. But I had a 22-year-old son who came to me and said to me, "Mom, I'm really worried. Since Dad passed away, I have to manage his funds and be the executor of the account for me and the girls." And he said, "I'm really nervous that I'm going to do a good job." And I said, as a mom would do, "You're going to be fine," which was no help at all. So he said, I think I know what I should do. And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "I think I need to go to talk to Mrs. Brennan." And I said, "Mrs. Brennan?" So in mom and parent language, Mrs. Brennan is really only Michael Brennan's mom, because I didn't really know about Mrs. Brennan. I had yet to be sitting with my 80-year-old mother in many doctor's appointments and opening up magazines and finding that pixie-like face inside the cover of many of the county magazines that I would see her in, and begin to read some of the fabulous things and acclaim that Patty has received over the years. And as she is the most wonderful person that we know her to be, she had that kitchen table conversation with my son to help him get his dad's things in order. And so I'm eternally grateful to her for that. And So today I present to you Westchester's own, our own, Mrs. Brennan.
Mary Frances said to me this morning, she said, I'm going to tell a story that you're not expecting. And boy, I was not expecting that. You know, it's interesting. It's one of those things where you don't realize the impact that each one of us has on other people, and a small, random, almost active, hopefully kindness, and a little bit of direction helped the 22-year-old settle in a state in a very difficult and vulnerable time in his life. And it's a real privilege. I can't begin to tell you what a privilege it is to be that person that people trust and would call upon in their most vulnerable moments. So thank you so much for that. Thank you. All right, so we are going to have some fun today. Okay, so today basically we're going to be talking about the markets, the economy, political uncertainty, etc. But we're also going to have some fun. So let me just see if we're working this thing right. I just messed it up. You know, I am technophobic. Okay, so just like last year, we had a lot of fun last year. I got a lot of great feedback. So pull out your cell phones. We're going to do something most speakers tell you don't do. Put away your. I want you to pull out your cell phone and get to your texting program. What I want you to do is where you would normally put the phone number, I want you to text the put in the number 22333. So 22333, and in the message, you're going to put KFI 2019. So 22333 KFI 2019. So while you're doing that, let me kind of give you a feel for what you can expect today, okay? Number one, we're going to be talking about markets, etc. Unfortunately, as you are getting your year-end statements on your 401ks and your IRAs and your regular accounts, you're finding that, well, you lost money last year. So we're going to talk about what happened both from an economic as well as a market perspective, and more importantly, what do we see for 2019? Number two, I'm going to also take some time to discuss some studies, recent studies that have been done that have validated, unfortunately, that in America, more than half of Americans are struggling financially. Why is that? Why aren't more people financially secure? Today we're going to talk about some of the reasons why that is happening so that no one in this room will ever be financially insecure. Number three, we are also going to talk about three very important tax planning, tax savings ideas that you're probably not hearing about. One very important one, a heads up for everybody in this room, okay? That's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm a little grateful to have a little bit of extra time because I've got some content that I am hoping is really going to make a difference for you. Okay, back to the fun. So, the texting program. As of Christmas Eve, the Santa Claus rally. You know, you hear about this every year. There's a Santa Claus rally at the end of the year. The Santa Claus rally, as of Christmas Eve, came through with a gain from the low of 8%. It rallied. Or B, the elves distracted Santa and it only went up 1.5%. Or C, Scrooge kidnapped Santa. There was no rally, no gifts, and the market was down 20%. Type in your answer. Just say A, B, or C. Okay, did we get our Santa Claus rally? Number one, was it a ho-hum? Number two, or number three, it was a dog, okay? Let's see the answers. All right, keep typing. Everybody put in your answer. The answer, we have a good group. Thank you for coming back every year. You are smart. You're absolutely right. The market went down. We finally, ladies and gentlemen, we got our bear market. It's been 10 years, we got our bear market. So, the next question is, when did it happen, what happened, and why? So you can see the year-end numbers are here. Pretty much no matter what you did with your money, unfortunately, it didn't work last year. The real damage was done in the fourth quarter. We're going to talk about what happened in the fourth quarter and why there was such a dramatic drop in the markets, all the markets. If you see here, I'm going to bring your eyes, there's a lot of numbers here. Go to the middle grid. This is the Morningstar grid. You can see the top numbers. The large cap growth for the calendar year was down 1.5%. Large cap value, on the other hand, those dividend paying stocks, those steady eddies, they lost more money than growth did. Technology, pharma, etc. But I want to bring your eyes to something important. I'm not suggesting that 3 months makes a trend, but if you look to the left side, you'll see that in the fourth quarter, growth lost a lot more money than value. Anybody have Apple? Anybody know what happened to Apple? October 4th, it peaked. It lost 40% of its market value. Up like an escalator, down like an elevator. It just plummeted, and it is still down 32%. So you can see the graph here. We can see from 2009, we had a wonderful, wonderful run up, and then again, there's your escalator, there's the elevator. Boom. And that is the way it often happens. Now, what's going to happen going forward? It's anybody's guess. There is a lot going on in the world right now. We've got the trade wars. We all hear about what's going on with China. We've got government shutdown, and that's hurting a lot of people. It's certainly hurting psychology and sentiment. On a local level, I heard a story yesterday about a brewing company or what have you, doing very, very well, expanding, started with one location, growing. And the interesting thing about this particular case, this is a small business. They had come up with a new line of beers, and they needed permits. They had gotten new locations, et cetera, but they needed permits. I didn't realize this. You need a permit for a label on a beer bottle. So they were waiting for that. Government is shut down. They can't get their permits. It's affecting this business. So we're going to hear more and more about the government shutdown and the impact that it could have on the economy. Anybody's guess could be could hit GDP anywhere from 0.5% to 1%. So, on an international scale, we can see, again, since 2009, the international markets up 90%. The U.S. has done triple that, even with our bear market. Now, always keep in mind, remember, we're going to be talking about biases and, just because it's happened in the last, cycle doesn't mean it always happens that way, right? If I can bring your attention over here, so here's it's called a secular bull market. Basically, markets don't go up straight up. They go up, they go down, etc. But the last bull market that occurred in the 2000s, the international markets doubled what we did in the United States. So just because it hasn't happened in the last, 9 or 10 years doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case. You can see here the main culprit is currency. Okay, the United States is growing. The rest of the world is not growing as fast. What happens? The dollar strengthens. When the dollar strengthens, it basically, those companies that are overseas, they are still doing pretty well. There are some real cash cows actually overseas. But when you transfer it back onto your international mutual fund statement, it's transferred into dollars, and that's where a lot of the losses are occurring. Again, going back, it can work the opposite way too. And we're already seeing the dollar going back down a bit. Year to date, what's doing better? International markets are outperforming the U.S. I'm not, again, suggesting that's a trend. I'm just telling you that's what's happening right now. So let's talk about the economy, okay? This is an interesting slide. We talk about GDP, etc. If the Atlanta Fed is correct, and we get our 2.7% GDP for the fourth quarter of 2018, the United States will have grown at 3.1% for the year. We finally got our 3% GDP. That is very healthy, good, sustainable growth, something that people didn't think we would ever get back to. The interesting thing about that is, and something that we all know, is that the consumer is a big part of the reason why GDP has recovered. In fact, all of us in this room, we are almost 70% of the economy. That's really, really important because we're going to talk about unemployment, right? And we're going to talk about this thing. People are freaking out about, we're going to have a recession, we're going to have a recession. I'm just going to tell you right now, I am not so sure we are headed for a recession. And I'm going to give you reasons why. This is one of them. The consumer is very healthy. Granted, sentiment has declined a tad, but let me tell you, we were like on drugs around Christmas. People were spending money, feeling very good, etc. So that's important. Relative to other influences on GDP, there's three of them. You've got the consumer, you've got spending, business spending, etc., and then you've got government. Since 1945, the consumer has become a much bigger influence on GDP. Here's government, and here's the rest. So we, as we know, we are a consumer-based economy, and it's becoming more and more so. So let's get back to companies, corporations. You can see on the left-hand side, the companies last year had record earnings. Guys, keep in mind, the market really is based on earnings. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Now, if you look at the green bars, that's what is the outlook of earnings going forward. Remember, outlooks are not always right, but that's the outlook. On the left side, you'll see that last year we had a great surge in profit margins. Huge surge, actually. Why is that? Well, corporations got a nice tax benefit last year, right? We got a new tax law that went directly to their bottom line, directly to their profit margins. Now, if you're a CEO, you have three choices. You've got this extra cash. What are you going to do with that money? You got three choices. Number one, you can increase your dividends. Number two, you can reinvest it into your company. Hire some people, buy some equipment, invest in research and development. Three choices. Last year, what did those CEOs do? Oops. There we go. Oh, where's my CEOs? Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a cool slide. I don't know if you guys like this slide. I think this is a cool slide. Here we have the United States. This is where these companies are actually domiciled, right? So here we are in Pennsylvania, we're the Hershey state, right? You got L.O. Bean in Maine, and you've got Starbucks and Apples in California, etc. So again, these CEOs are making a decision. Three choices. Where'd they put the money? Well, as you can see here, they didn't increase their dividends. They increased spending a little bit, but not really that much. What did they do? They bought back their own stock. Proof and further evidence that even CEOs are lousy market timers. Come on, what are you doing buying your own stock? The market, you buy your own stock in your own company and you lose 20%. If CEOs can't do it on their own companies, how are we supposed to do it? So keep that in mind. All right, so we've heard about this treasury yield, this flattening yield curve. Guys, during the year, this is probably one of the biggest reasons why the market was really skittish, because we were watching this thing called the yield curve. So basically, by the way, I have to tell you, I'm especially thirsty this morning because my crazy family decided after Christmas, we ate so much crap, we're gonna do this cleanse. Well, let me tell you something. I'm dying this morning, first of all. And you get really dehydrated. I forget to drink. And so I'm doing this thing, and I'm doing these shakes, etc. I'm not supposed to, you know, whatever. So anyway, so I'm especially thirsty only because I'm cleaned out. Alrighty, so we get back to the yield curve. So just to kind of take a step back, let me refresh your memories on what this flattening yield curve is all about. Basically, what the yield curve is measuring is the difference between the 2-year Treasury and the 10-year Treasury, okay? Now think about it this way. If you go into the bank and you want to get a CD, it would be natural to expect that you're going to get a higher interest rate if you're willing to tie your money up for 10 years, right? Than you would for 2 years. It's the same thing with bonds, okay? So basically what happens is with treasuries, you've got this spread between two-year and 10-year bonds. What happens is, depending on what's happening with the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve only controls this part, and the bond market controls this part. The 10-year controls your mortgage rate, okay? The Federal Reserve has nothing to do with your mortgage rate. It's the bond market. So basically what happens is, as the Federal Reserve is increasing here, and the bond market is, you know, making their judgment on where the economy is, the 10-year is going down and flattening. So that's that term, flattening. All it is it getting closer and closer and closer. Now, what happens if you look at the graph? Historically, when this phenomenon inverts, in other words, you would get a higher interest rate just getting a 2-year bond than a 10-year bond. That's called an inverted yield curve. It doesn't make any sense, and yet it does happen. It's happened 5 times since the 70s, and every single time we have inverted, we have been in a recession within 9 to 18 months. So people are looking at this yield curve, we're getting closer, 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 and then, oh, we're gonna have a recession, we're going into a recession. People start freaking out and start selling stocks. That is a very important thing that we all keep in mind. Now, a couple things. First of all, this is where we are now. It is not the first time we've been at a 0.5%. It's happened before. It didn't necessarily mean it inverted, okay? You can see here, like in the 90s, we ended up almost touching the flat line, and it ended up going back up, and we went years and years without going into a recession. So again, just to kind of give you a feel for what happened last year, the yield curve had a lot to do with it. Now, I will never be able to fill Jim's shoes this morning. I will tell you that he sent over his presentation, and some of the highlights in his presentation was his opinion on this yield curve. I have an article also in the journal yesterday, fascinating article written by Greg Ike. Basically, while this phenomenon has been true in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be true this time, because the Federal Reserve, when we went into our terrible recession, they did this thing called QE, right? Quantitative easing, 1, 2, 3, etc. And they increased their balance sheet to trillions of dollars. What they're doing now is they're reducing their balance sheet by introducing bonds. They're selling these bonds back into the bond market. So this 10-year yield, remember, it is a supply-demand phenomenon. You add that much to that bond market, it's going to influence that 10-year rate. So just because it's happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to happen. This phenomenon of the flattening yield curve, there are definitely some new influences that we've never had before. Again, I'm not saying it's not important, it's not something to keep an eye on, it's just that there are different things. I would just say that the lens has become much foggier. Okay, unemployment. When we look at this, we see that unemployment is at generational lows. Jim, as well as most economists out there, have a tough time. Remember, we are a consumer-based economy. people are having a tough time imagining that we are going to go into a recession when unemployment is this low. So you think about the economy as it is right now. We have record low interest rates, record low unemployment. The consumer's feeling pretty giddy. It doesn't get much better than that, guys. It's a Goldilocks economy. Again, don't know what's gonna happen for sure. A lot will depend on what the Federal Reserve actually does. By the way, if any of you have been watching the market since the beginning of the year, since Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, the market has been doing nothing but go up. Why is that happening? Okay? Another major factor, on top of the tariffs, on top of the shutdown, is Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. So in December, the Federal Reserve increased interest rates. They've been telling us they're going to increase them, but sure enough, they increased interest rates. The reason December was so bad was because in his comments, Powell kind of came across like, excuse my French, but come, you know what, and water, right? I'm increasing interest rates next year, probably 3 times. Now, what people didn't realize was he was originally going to increase rates in 2019 4 times. So he went down to 3 times, but he was quite adamant that they're going to stay on their current tightening path. 2 Fridays ago, he was on a panel with Bernanke and Janet Yellen, and his tone was very, very different. He basically was saying, look, this is what our plan is, but we are still data dependent. It will still be data dependent. We're not automatically going to increase rates just arbitrarily. It is data dependent. Yesterday, the market was way, way down. All of a sudden, midday, it turned on a dime and was up almost 200 points because yesterday, again, in his comments, Powell said 4 times, we're going to be patient. And everybody's breath was breathing a sigh of relief, saying, okay, if they're not doing this, they'll cool their jets up here, and we're not going to be pushed into a recession. So, unemployment, lots of things to think about. Here we see record low interest rates, okay? This is kind of a visual guide. You can see that we are still here relative to other times, other decades in the country. I mean, geez, we're not going back to 18%, that's for sure, right? We are still at generational lows on interest rates. So it's a pretty good economy. So, if Christmas Eve was the bottom, if that was it, okay, the question here is, how long from the bottom, once it hits its peak, we go through the 20%, what is the recovery time on average? And if you can see here, once it's hit its peak, now the peak was September 20th. Typically on average, going back all the way, it's about a 24-month round trip. Now again, that is average. There are times when it's been much shorter, there are times when it's been longer. The financial crisis was very deep, as you guys remember, those of us that were in the room then, 57% loss, peak to trough, beginning to end, okay? Believe it or not, the recovery after the financial crisis was actually quicker than it was after the tech bubble. The tech bubble, it took more than 4 years round trip. That's a pretty long recovery. That took a long time for us to get back on solid footing, probably caused by 9/11 and what happened in 2002. So, all right, pull out your phones again. We're gonna have fun again. All right, now, if you have a penny, the penny doubles every day for 30 days. How much money do you have? A, $956,000. B, $173,000. C, $5.3 million. Or D, $22,000. A penny doubles every day for 30 days. How much money money do you have? Type in your answer. A, B, C, or D. Okay, here we go. Okay, so, all right, here we go. We do have we like our D's here, huh? I think we got it, right? All right, so 50% of all of you in this room say $22,000. Okay, what is the answer? The answer is, okay, don't fall off your chairs. Hang tight. $5.3 million is the answer. Compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. It is unbelievable. I know you don't believe it. Okay, now we are going to do something. Yes, sir.
Can I change my answer?
You want that double. You want to find out what that investment is. I know. All right, so now we're going to do, unfortunately, when money doubles and et cetera, there's one little problem. We got to pay taxes. So pull out your phones again. Same penny, same double, same 30 days. But this time, you're going to do what we Americans have to do. We got to pay our taxes, right? So we're going to pay our taxes. Every day you pay your taxes on your gain. After 30 days, how much money do you have? $3.7 million, $48,000, or $1.3 million? Type in your answer. A, B, or C. How much money do you have after 30 days?
Are the taxes paying for the wall?
I am not even going there. The tax is paying for the wall. Okay, so A, B, or C. What is the answer?
There you go.
All right, there we go. Again, 51%, $1.3 million. Again, hold on to those chairs, guys. The answer is $48,000. I want you all to listen up really carefully. Pay attention. The last thing I'm going to talk about are 3 tax savings ideas. This is why it's so important. Taxes are a big deal in your lives. Oh, and by the way, for those Donald and Debbie doubters in the audience, I know you don't believe it. I know you don't believe it. There's my email. Email me, ask me for the actual numbers. I'm going to send you the actual numbers just so that you know that I'm not kidding here, okay? So, now let's talk about America, right? I talked in the beginning when we were talking, I said, you know, more than half of Americans are struggling financially. This was a Prudential study. What I find disappointing or a little disturbing is another study that was completed last year, actually 2017. And basically what this study did was it was a wide-ranging study on all the demographics. And basically what they were doing is they were asking Americans, people, how confident are you feeling about your financial future? How confident are you about retirement and your retirement income? More than half people said, I'm feeling really good. I'm really confident, or pretty confident. Those same exact people were then asked to answer a financial literacy test. You ready for this one? Only 28% of those people got a passing score of 60%. 28%, guys. And I don't even know about you, but the school I went to, 60% wasn't exactly passing. The average was less than 50, 47% was it. Basic financial literacy, guys. The reason this worries me so much is that we've got these blinders on. There's some just basic fundamentals that if you just understand them, it can make a huge difference on where you end up and where our kids end up. So just keep in mind, perception. How we feel is one thing, but just keep in mind, we get to do this once. Don't fool around with it. It's your life. You guys are all working really hard. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. All right, so we're gonna have some fun. Let's have some fun. Are you having fun, by the way? I'm all about the fun, okay? All right, so a new person goes into a store and he wants to buy a toothbrush. So he goes up to the counter, goes to the shopkeeper, does the action, and is able to communicate exactly what he's looking for, and the purchase is made. An hour later, a blind man comes in, wants to buy some shampoo, goes up to the counter, and the question here is, how does the blind man indicate what he wants? You guys. He opens his mouth and asks for it, right? Okay. Why do I have this here? Okay, it's human nature. We all want to kind of make shortcuts. It's the way the brain is wired. Shortcuts, emotions. We look for patterns out there. Just be really, really careful when you're managing your money that way. Since 2000, we have had a perfect environment for something I call S&P envy. What's S&P envy? S&P envy is blah, 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 blah. Patty tells me I should be diversified. I've got this portfolio. But look at the S&P 500. It's done so well. Why don't I just put all my money in the S&P 500? It's a good question. So let's take a look. Since 2000, if we look at it in terms of cycles, the first cycle, we can see the S&P 500 lost money. But you know what? Hey, I diversified, but I still lost money. What is the deal? The next cycle, the S&P 500 did very, very well. Diversified portfolio did well too, but I didn't make as much. During the financial crisis, again, S&P lost money, diversified portfolio down 20%. What is the deal? I lost money. And then the last 10 years, S&P has done phenomenally well. You guys who are doing the right thing, you're diversifying your portfolio, doing asset allocation, all the stuff that we've talked about together for 15 years, and you didn't make as much. In fact, the diversified portfolio did 100% lower than the S&P 500. So here we go back. I lost money, I didn't make as much. I lost money, I didn't make as much. However, what are the results? Again, I hope you remember a lot of stuff, guys. One thing I hope you do not confuse performance with outcome. You're looking for outcomes. The diversified portfolio on $100,000 ended up with more money than the S&P 500. Outcomes. Okay. Diversification wins even when it feels like you're losing. What you're doing is we want to tighten those bands. Now, here we've talked, this is another way of looking at it. Another thing out there is inverted returns or the sequence of returns. Here on the left side, you've got the S&P 500 for 30 years. On the right side, it's the exact same S&P 500. But what I've done here is I flipped the order of the returns. So the last return, 4.91, is the first return. The second to last return is the second return. So all I did here is I flipped the order of the returns. So for those of you who are working during your accumulation years, if you just held on for all 30 years, the average rate of return was exactly the same, A versus B, as was the risk, the standard deviation. So when you take a look at it graphically, when the returns were earned, it occurred at different times. But if you just hung in there for the full 30 years, you ended up at exactly the same place. But if you're in drawdown, meaning distribution, this is the retirement income phase, the person who's taking 5% out per year, increasing for inflation, invested in the S&P 500, even though it did 10%, and that person only was taking out 5%, ran out of money. That's important. It's a different way of looking at it is dollar cost ravaging. Okay? Have you heard of dollar cost averaging? You're putting a little bit of money in every month or every year. You're averaging out. The opposite of that in retirement is you're moving money out on a monthly basis, theoretically, right? So the blue line, again, take it back to 2000. This graph, I'm only taking out that magic 4%, right? You say 4% is that magic number, you take out 4%, historically you'd be okay. Not necessarily. Here you see the blue line is 4%. That person started out with $1 million, stuck with the 4% per year. They're looking at an account balance of $311,000. And I gotta tell you, they're feeling pretty uncomfortable. Now the green line, I'm gonna introduce a concept called capture ratios. The green line is a capture ratio of 65% on the upside, 55% on the downside. So in other words, if the S&P 500 does 10%, 65% of that is 6.5%. When the market loses 10%, that person still lost 5.5. So 65 on the up, 55 on the down. Still the 4%, that person ended up with about what they started with. So again, you want to tighten the band. What's the phenomenon at work? Okay. Let's see, I guess we flipped these slides around at 10 o'clock last night, so I'm a little bit out of order. All right, let's do another brain teaser. Mary's father, and again, well, I'll tell you why in a second. Mary's father had 5 daughters, okay? Nana, Nettie, Nini, and No-No. What's the name of the 5th daughter? So you've got Nana, Nini, so most people, okay, A-E-I-O-U. Most people would say Nunu, right? A-E-I-O-U. You see that, right? What's the answer? Damn, you guys are smart. Okay, the answer is Mary had 5 daughters, okay? So the thing about this is you gotta be careful again about these shortcuts. So this idea of capture ratio, again, what is the phenomenon? The phenomenon is when things are down, okay? When you lose, like this is $1, but you have $10,000, you lose 50%, how much money do you have? Come on, shout out. 5,000, right? You recover, right? You get 50%, how much money do you have? Bingo, 7,500, okay? So that's why capture ratios, losing hurts a lot more than gaining helps. Yes,
Can
sir.
you go back 2 slides?
Yeah, 2
I
slides.
did not follow.
Mary?
You took 40, no, you
By the way, you guys, it's my brother-in-law. So I know.
That was good.
Brian, I know you. It takes a while for things to process. I love you dearly, but.
So you take out 40 grand a year, and you go
Yes.
down to 300 grand.
Yep.
And what did you take out to stay at 900? I didn't follow that.
Same thing, 4%. You're taking 4% out of the portfolio every single year. Rising inflation. So the difference is, what the problem is, during this period of time, we had two economic, all right, we're gonna go back. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right here. So the problem, here's the thing.
Says you took out $1 million.
Right, so in both cases, apples to apples, this is an apple. In both cases, we took out over $1 million. So the amount taken out was exactly the same. The ending value was not. And basically it has to do with, and again, anybody who wants to see the chart, happy to send it to you. The thing about it is, when we're on withdrawal, okay, if we're sticking with things without taking a flexible approach or without having, and I'm not going to talk about it today, there are certain things that you can do to set yourself up so that that doesn't happen to you. And it has to do with how you set up your money. You basically want to set it up with 3 pools of money. Again, I won't go into it, but this is exactly what happened. Okay? So we'll keep going forward only because Gary's going to kill me because they made him. They said he had to talk, so I don't want to steal any of his time. All right, so we got that. Capture, loses. Okay. Now we're talking about mistakes that people make in terms of approaching their money, etc. It's not just about portfolios. We also make mistakes in other decisions. For example, this is Social Security. More than half of Americans take their Social Security at either 62 or 63. Just understand that if you take it early, if you take it at 62, you're getting penalized you're getting 25% less every month for the rest of your life. If you wait, this is normal retirement, if you wait actually till age 70, you get actually 32% more every month for the rest of your life. Now, really, really important. This is not to say that everybody in this room should wait until they're 70 so they get 57% more every month. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is it is very individual. Think about it, okay? I may have a couple and husband and wife both worked, or maybe they didn't, or maybe one spouse earned a lot more money than the other. That will impact this decision. Is there an age difference between the two? That will impact this decision. How they feeling these days? How they feeling? How is their life expectancy? That is another important thing. If they do not take Social Security, where are they going to pull the money from? How are they going to replace that $3,000 a month? Because if you're not getting it from here, it's got to come from somewhere. So what are the tax implications of doing that? What's their tax bracket? You'd be surprised. There are some people who shouldn't wait. Go ahead and take Social Security. It is a case-by-case decision, okay? When you're thinking about retirement, there's 3 phases of retirement: the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years, okay? A lot of people don't know what their cash flow needs are. I mean, I think I've said this, I am not a person who believes really in budgets. Budgets sound so restricting, but I do think it's important for you to have a good feel for what your cash flow needs are today and what they're going to be going forward. And by the way, this is true for people in all different phases. Hey, listen, you know what? You might have you might be in those middle years. You might have younger kids. You're looking at retirement. What are your cash flow needs? How are you looking at kids in college, right? Where's that money going to be invested? How are you going to, if that's important to you, where's that money going to come from? So cash flow needs are very, very important. Keep it in mind. When people retire, I often refer to that as it's kind of like freshman year in college, okay? I don't know about your kids. I have 4 of them, okay? I got one of them sitting in the front here. True or false? Freshman year, these kids go nuts, right? First year, a couple years of retirement, it's human nature to want to go nuts. You've been working all your life, answering to perhaps a boss. You've got freedom, flexibility, and people tend to actually spend more money those first few years than they did while they were working. You've got to build that in. You go through then people kind of settle in, sophomore year, junior year, and then you get into the later years. Medical stuff is really important. In 2018, the average American spent $5,200 at age 65. You gotta build this in. That same person, by the time they're age 85, will be spending per person $18,000 per year. So gotta just build it in. Run the numbers, make sure you're okay. So, we're talking about, I don't want to bum you out, Americans are struggling, etc. Okay, let's kind of get some perspective here. So, in 1910, only 14% of homes had bathtubs. Last year, I think I saw Todd in the back over there, in Chester County, hey there, in Chester County alone, we built 1,600 homes, most of which probably had bathtubs, okay? In 1910, you had to go to the drugstore to get gasoline. Now we've got electric cars, guys. And you know what? Probably, I certainly, I'm hoping in our lifetime, we're gonna have self-driving cars. Think about what that means from an economic perspective. That is a very, very big deal. It's a game changer. Life expectancy was 47. Guys in this room, your life expectancy is now 80, almost double. And we girls, it's 83. How about it? So hospitals, okay, the percentage of births, out of hospital births, oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute, I gave out the answer. More than 95% of births were done at home, okay? People had babies in their homes. Last year, it was 1% of births occurred outside the hospital. And that's probably because the moms didn't make it to the hospital, right? Now, I don't know if you can see it. I'm kind of bummed because this is such a beautiful picture of Chester County Hospital. Can you guys tell in the background? How lucky are we? This is kind of a sidebar. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it exciting to realize that in our own neighborhood, what's happening with that hospital? I mean, it's amazing. By the time they're done, we are going to have a state-of-the-art complex that is going to be the envy of counties all across the country. That's really exciting. Again, in our own backyard. 1910, the average worker made $300 a year. You fast forward into today's dollars, that would be equal to about $10,400 in a calendar year at 3% inflation. Today, in Chester County, the average income is $92,000. And by comparison, this is the United States, the median income, we're doing real well, real well. Now, if I can point out to the third line, it's, I think most of us would agree that a poverty rate of 77% is still too high, but relative to the rest of the country, it is about half. So, kudos, Chester County Economic Development. There is this county and this group has done so much to promote the economy in Chester County, and I don't know if we sometimes lose sight of how lucky we are to live in this county. We are so blessed. We have access to the greatest minds. We've got hospital. It's incredible, the industry that's coming in here. And I personally am so grateful to the Economic Development Council for everything that you guys do to promote the quality of life that we have. So, you know what, I'm gonna stop there. Can we please give these guys a big round? All right, so, oh,
We're
wait,
opening it
time
up
out,
now.
time out,
Yeah,
time out.
time out.
Wait, I got one more thing.
Go.
One more thing.
Go.
Sit.
Say it.
Sit. You guys told me I needed to talk, so I'm talking. So here we go. All right, so I am pulling it together. Force multipliers. There are key force multipliers. There's 7 of them. 7 things. If you just do these things, don't make it harder than it needs to be. This is the way most Americans, you're working, and you're not getting as much impact. Using these multipliers, it's less effort and you get a much bigger bang, okay? One of those force multipliers is this. I'm just gonna give you one today. This is the king of Prussia Mall, guys, okay? Let's say that you're at the mall and you wanna go to one of the stores. Let's say that you wanna go to Sears. Absolutely not. Okay, we're not going to Sears, okay? We're gonna go to Nordstrom, let's say, okay? So, what's wrong with this picture? It's missing the "You Are Here" sticker. You gotta know where you are to figure out the best way to get you to where you want to go. Most people don't know where they are. Have you ever been at the mall and you just started walking and then you went around and said, oh, wait, I'm going the wrong way? Okay. Don't live your life that way. Don't live your financial life that way. That is a force multiplier. It sounds simple. It is powerful. Powerful. Okay, 3 things. Tips for 2019. Be careful about S&P envy. Be very careful about that. Don't be envious. Now, Number two. Focus on the outcomes. It is not about performance. Forget about that. It is about your outcomes. And number 3, these things are a big deal. AMT, number 1. For those of you in this room that ever paid alternative minimum tax, real quick, when you do your taxes, when your accountant does your taxes, they do your taxes the regular way and the alternative way. And you basically pay the higher of the two. If the alternative way was higher, let's say that the AMT way was $30,000, I'm just picking out numbers, versus $25,000, that $5,000 difference, you get a tax credit for that, okay? You keep track of the tax credit. Every year that you paid AMT, you build on that tax credit. Everybody know what a tax credit is? It's not a deduction. It's a dollar for dollar offset on your taxes. Why is that important? Sidebar, little thing about the new tax law. When they were putting together the legislation, they were going to get rid of AMT altogether. Well, guess what? Some senator or somebody raised their hand and says, you know what? If we get rid of AMT, then these people who have this carry forward credit, me included, we won't be able to get that credit anymore. So they left AMT in the legislation. They made the exclusion much bigger, and you have to make $1 million before you start whittling away at that exclusion. So AMT is still there, but most people aren't going to be affected by it. Why is that important? When you do your taxes, okay, now you're not getting hit with AMT. Now when you do your taxes, let's say that your regular way, again, your alternative way, but now we flip it. Now, your regular way is $30,000, the AMT way is $25,000. But you have this carry forward. Guess what? You only owe $25,000. That's your tax liability because you carried forward that credit. It is really important. Make sure you or your accountant has filed the proper forms, because if you didn't file your forms, you lost your credit. If you are curious about this, again, send me an email. I will send you, because this is a complicated concept, I'll send you an explanation of this, the forms, and for those of you where the forms weren't filed, you can amend your taxes. Very big deal. Oops, sorry. Other two things, the 12% tax bracket, much wider, a lot more people in there. If you're in a 12% tax bracket, did you know that if you sell something, you pay no capital gains tax? You're not paying 23.8% or 15% capital gains tax. If you're in a 12% tax bracket, you're paying 0. So again, if you know if you're doing your tax planning, your financial planning, if you know next year you're going to be in a 12% tax bracket, maybe you don't want to sell that investment this year. Why don't you sell it next year? You'll save 23%. Okay. Third thing, Roth conversions. We're in a bear market. Roth conversions are even more powerful in a bear market. You have $100,000, it's down to 80. Convert that into a Roth. Eventually, wherever it was, it's going to recover. Now you're paying taxes on $80,000, not $100,000. Much better. Okay. Last but not least, takeaways. Remember key force multipliers. It's not just about your portfolio. Lots of different decisions. If the world does not come to an end, okay, if the world does not come to an end, and you follow certain things, you're going to be okay. And by the way, you're going to probably be much better off than you would have in 1910. And if the world does come to an end, you probably aren't going to care. Let me end with one more thing. We're ending this thing, okay? If there's nothing else I tell you, remember, we are the Eagles. The economy is just like the Eagles. Do not count us out. Got it?
Open it up to Q&A. Q&A. Anybody have any questions? Hand over here. Put your hands up.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
I think I've been here 15 years. I've been coming all the time. I have two questions for you.
Two questions.
Regarding, we heard the president say a couple of times or tweet his complaints about the Federal Reserve
Yes.
and so on, and why are they messing with the good economy and so on. From your perspective, how do you feel the feds have been doing with respect to what's been happening in the economy?
Did everybody hear the question?
So the question is, yeah, go ahead. And what's your second
The
question?
second question is, Mr. Cufflinks, as I referred to him, as black tie,
Okay.
crash-proof retirement.
Oh, yes.
Preservation of principle.
Yeah,
As someone who,
Yeah.
is semi-retired, 72 years old, remembering from college days of 50 years ago, it
Yeah.
was like, your age should be in bonds, the others should be in securities and so on. So if you're 60%,
Yeah.
what's the thinking
Yeah,
now?
yeah,
Because he
yeah.
always talks about preservation of principle, and I'm very wary when I walk in. If I walked in today and you had a tuxedo on and diamonds
Yeah.
and monograms, I would probably leave.
Yeah.
So that's the two questions.
Yeah, great questions. First of all, I'll answer the second one first. I have to be very careful about this because there is, don't believe everything you hear.
Right.
Just don't believe everything you hear. That's a very, have you ever been in a situation where a lot of what's being said kind of makes sense, it's kind of what you want to hear, but there's something inside that tells you there's probably something more to the story? You're probably right. There are some things that are not being communicated that are really, really important as it relates to that. Now, the rule of thumb, age monitor bonds, et cetera, again, it's kind of like the Social Security. That works very well as long as it works very well. We have to recognize bonds are running around 2 to 3%. If that's going to be enough for you, that's great. The problem is that when those rules of thumb came out, and I didn't bring up the slide today, the average bond portfolio did about 5%. So we're getting about half now, so I'm not so sure on an inflation-adjusted basis that rule of thumb is going to work for everybody here. That's the answer there. Federal Reserve. So Donald Trump has had a lot of negative comments about Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve and what they've been doing. I will tell you that no president, historically, presidents do not get reelected if we're in a recession. And with the flattening yield curve, et cetera, he's freaking out. He is absolutely freaking out. By the way, just like every other president, he got into the midterm elections. He went into the midterm elections, and he's doing the tariffs, and he's doing all this kind of stuff. He loses the midterm elections, just like every other two-term president. President wanted to reelect. They have all lost the midterm elections. Go back and look at history. What do these presidents do? They wake up the next morning and they say, "Oh my goodness, I lost. What do we need to do? What do I need to do to get reelected?" You look back to the comments, the before and the after, just like Obama. Obama promised, we are not lowering taxes for the rich. The next morning after the midterms, what did he do? They started working on the new tax law and they lowered taxes for the rich. The next morning, Trump woke up and all of a sudden, all this tough talk about tariffs, he's like, okay guys, we gotta figure something out with China, all right? And the Federal Reserve, my honest opinion, I think the Federal Reserve is doing a fabulous job. I really do. They are doing a terrific job. They're lowering their balance sheet. We are in a Goldilocks economy. The unemployment this low, inflation is non-existent. They've got a dual mandate. That is it. They want inflation 2% or lower, unemployment, full employment is 5%. We're much lower than that. So we've got a buffer. They want to get interest rates to normalize. They are still low, although they're getting closer to normal. So they're just trying to eke it back up so that if there is, God forbid, a terrorist attack, or God forbid something, and they need to lower again, they've got some room to go. So I think they're doing a great job. I think that the perceptions, the media, again, we got to be careful. The economy is so complicated. The Fed has a good understanding of that, and they don't want to push us into a recession.
Thank you.
Chuck?
Anybody?
Chuck over here?
Chuck, yes, sir.
Good morning.
Hi.
I'm shocked you didn't mention commercial real estate as an investment vehicle, but we can save
Oh.
that. We can save that for another day.
Okay.
But my question is.
Yes.
There's been a lot of discussion about the federal qualified opportunity zones.
We're gonna talk about
as
that.
a basis for creating a tax efficient
Yep.
strategy moving forward. My question is that something that's on your radar and on a practical level? Is that something you're implementing with your clients?
It is. Now, I'm not gonna steal their thunder, okay? This opportunity zone is one of the most exciting things out there in terms of an opportunity to save taxes, invest in our community, et cetera, et cetera. It is a very, very big deal. So the answer is yes. I will end it there. I'm not gonna, I won't comment more on opportunity zones because I want these guys to take care of that. It's a very big deal. Yes, sir.
Patty, you're still talking about health, financial health of corporations.
Yeah.
Several months ago, a lot of cash sitting on the sidelines.
Mhm.
You made the comment about increasing profits
Yep.
being reinvested. Give me a sense of what happened to the cash that was sitting on the sidelines.
It's still there.
It's still there.
It's still there. Companies still are holding on to a lot of cash. They did a lot of buybacks, but they still are holding on to a lot of cash. Great question.
Including overseas.
Including overseas. The repatriation, great question, actually. So, part of the new tax law was this forgiveness of corporations who had all their money overseas. We're gonna give you this, this one-time opportunity, bring it back, et cetera. A lot of companies did take advantage of that opportunity, did bring that cash back to the United States. It was not as much as the federal government had hoped. Now, again, companies are just taking this, they're putting their toe in the water a little bit at a time, but it is happening, not quite as much as they had hoped. Yes?
Hey Patty, with QE3, they were adding, the Federal Reserve was pumping $100 billion a month into the economy, stock market goes up.
Yeah.
Now they're sucking out $50 billion a month. Stock market's got a lot more volatility, got a $1 trillion budget deficit, $21 trillion of debt. How does that all impact this year?
It's another great question. It's very true. They are taking away a lot of the liquidity, okay? But at the rate of $50 billion, $600 billion a year. That is having, interestingly, less effect than a lot of people thought it would. It really isn't restricting it that much. Now, again, we've got a lot of bankers in the room, okay? That's, the economy is based on the ability to get liquidity, for small businesses to have access to liquidity. And banks have loosened some of the underwriting requirements, et cetera, for corporations. Things have eased up nicely. So far, we haven't seen it really becoming difficult for, corporate America and even people trying to get mortgages. But time will tell. But so far, that part hasn't really had the effect nearly as much. The wealth effect, which is something that Jim had in his commentary, is a much bigger impact, is the wealth effect. What's the wealth effect? When we see these wonderful statements, et cetera, we're getting, raises because we're getting, wages are increasing now a little bit faster than inflation, so that's something we all have to watch. But that's creating this wealth effect, and we're feeling, warm and fuzzy, and what happens then? We're out there, shopping. I will tell you a true story. I had somebody in my office yesterday, and as a retirement kind of a reward, this gentleman wanted to get a special watch. So they were overseas, and I was really bummed out because they were overseas. His wife said he saw the watch, and he didn't buy it. That's interesting. That's the reverse of the wealth effect. If people stop doing what they've been doing for the last 9 years, it could have an impact on the economy. So that's just one example. Just happened yesterday. It'll be interesting to see if I begin to hear more of that. I told him to go and get the darn watch, okay? That's got more of an impact than the reduction of the balance sheet.
Anybody else?
Okay.
You join with me in thanking Patty?
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Pat. Patty does an outstanding job here every year. We're so indebted to Patty. Thanks for coming in and filling in for Jim and doing a great job the last minute and filling up all this time which we thought we had to fill up. So thank you so much. Thank you all for coming out and hanging in. So for a few minutes. probably wondering what's going on in this organization. As you know, we sincerely appreciate your attendance faithfully every year to come to this event, make it sort of a highlight of our year, because we look forward to having Patty here and sharing her perspective of what's going on in our economy. But there's a lot of things that this organization's doing with your participation that makes a difference here every day in Chester County. Mary Frances is going to sort of summarize some of the activities of some of the opportunities that we've been working on. Very quickly, we're going to talk about some opportunity zones. Chris McHenry will talk about that, and Mary Beth will talk a little bit about workforce, and you're going to meet Patrick Halakaya, who's our new innovation director, and last but not least, Sherwood will talk about some expansive opportunities in our region. So, with that,
We're gonna keep it short.
very short.
Okay. So can you watch me? Yep. So, we just wanted to give you some updates about what we think is coming in the new year and how excited we are to see some of these projects come to fruition. And to Chuck's point, that's the opportunity zone presentation. I'm gonna go to the photographs, to the projects. So some quick things that have happened this year that will impact some of the growth in some of the companies next year. One of the best projects that happened this year was USSC, United States Seating Corporation, also Fogmaker. They took a new building across the street from them. They were in 120,000 square feet, and they've moved into 168,000 square feet, the old West Pharmaceutical building. And they're bringing 263 jobs back to Chester County. They bought their contract manufacturing business back from Chicago, and they are reinvesting in Exton, in Euclid Township. So we're really excited about that. We partnered with them on a Governor's Action Team project, and they received $900 and something thousand in grant, job creation tax credits, and training money. The big news last week, if you Google them, you'll find out that they just purchased the Vista Brake Lock company as well. So you can see what they're doing is they're taking every part of their product line and they are bringing it in-house. Again, they're going to generate more jobs in Chester County in one location. All of us don't want to be on Route 100 probably at 8 o'clock. The other thing that we've been involved in is trying to create an environment for developers to find things easily. And so in partnership with the Chester County Planning Commission, we embarked on two really significant maps called the Opportunities Maps. One for the Route 724 corridor and one for the Route 1 corridor. We worked in concert with the municipalities to understand where their ugly, tired, and poor locations were and where they wanted to see development. Because you know, if you're in the development world, if you don't have municipal partnership, it ain't gonna happen. So, this map was conceived for both regions and out there along for the corridor as well as for Route 1 and for 724. Not only are the maps there with the parcels, but so is the zoning information. And so it makes it a one-stop place for developers to go to get information. I see Kevin in the room, and as a representative of the Planning Commission, we're really delighted because they made us look good. This is the TOD development that's going on in Downingtown, the River Station project. A lot of people knew about the demo that happened, right? The implosion of the building that occurred this year. Next year, you'll begin to see things moving along. About April, they say, this year, 2019, we'll begin to see some redevelopment occurring in the River Station project. This is the office and, this is the residential portion that will be connected back to Johnsontown Park. And this is the train station that will be eventually moved to the T intersection right there at the underpass in Downingtown. Very exciting project. We're really excited about that. And again, it's all gonna extend back to the trail, the Chester Valley Trail. And where the trail is, right, we're happy because it's where we're healthiest and wealthiest and wisest. This is the rendering of what the residential is gonna look in the crossover into Johnsontown Park. Everybody's been talking about what's going on in Coatesville, continues to percolate there. Everybody says, okay, I'm believing. How long do I have to believe? The money's in place for the improvements at 82 and Lincoln Highway. And so that is coming in 2019. Again, a really positive thing because we need that to jumpstart construction that we want to see happen and the development we want to see happen. Chris will talk about this because this is smack in the middle of the federally qualified Keystone Opportunity Zone. Another project we're really excited about is the Pennhurst State Mental Health Hospital Rehabilitation Project. Last year, 2018, 2019, 2017, I'm getting them confused. We partnered with the developer to take opportunity of the Business in Our Sites grant loan program, 60% loan 40% grant, and we got $10 million. $4 million of it is the grant that we, the Economic Development Council, were needed to be partner with to be able to take advantage of that. What's important about this is it's going to need, this project's probably a $60 million project. That $10 million is for infrastructure only, but it is going to jumpstart this project and begin to change the narrative for Pennhurst. And the demo and the remediation. Is anybody from, where's Panoni? Is Panoni in the house? There you are, Dan's here. Dan's team is leading the charge, and that, they were saying, should we start? It's winter, should we start the demo and the remediation, or should we wait till spring? Well, you know, as soon as you decide not to wait till spring, what happens? The weather goes fine, right? So anyway, we're waiting for this to begin to happen in 2019. Again, positive things coming. This site, for those of you that know the Coatesville industrial market, you know that this is a Sikorsky helicopter development area, and this is Washington Lane. So if you know that area, this lot 6 and 7, Monterey Mushrooms is coming out of Monterey, California. They are a spawn company. So they are a high technology, high rate, good job paying, you know, engineers, bioengineers. They are bringing 116 jobs to Chester County, brand new. So the mushroom business is alive and well, trust me. If this company is making this investment in that area, that is coming in 2019. This is the industrial spec building that was built at 251 Waverly, and I'm giving Jim Redding a big shout out, it's free advertisement. But this is a 52,000 square foot building that is the only industrial spec building that has been built since the downturn. So are we optimistic about when things are happening for 2019? This sort of indicates that we are. The last is just a couple quick things. This is Eli Kahn's project. This is the former Mosteller building. That was that old brown ugly building. Finally, last year, Eli got his approvals and got it through city government, and it is coming in 2019. You'll begin to see some changes downtown in the Westchester market. So again, avoid the construction site, right? Pleasant Grove, down off of 202, they're building another daycare, 27,000 square foot. That will come online this year. New Garden Township, Kale and Mushrooms have an expansion of another 20,000 square feet. And Collegium Charter, if anybody was in Oak Lanes Park, you know it is building. 283 homes coming online, multifamily, along with their arts center. So are we optimistic about 2019? We sure are. I'm going to pass it to Chris, I believe. Chris is right here, and he is going to talk to you quickly about the federally qualified opportunity zones. You need the clicker.
Morning, everyone.
There you are.
So I'm going to go over here by Chuck because he set me up. Hang out on this side for a little while because I'm left-handed too. Very brief overview on opportunity zones. I'm sure everybody's heard about them, aren't really familiar with them, but this is part of the new tax cut law. It's taking a while to get into place. It's still not 100% into place yet, but the basic rules have been published. There is a note in the basic rules that they can be relied on to start these projects now. So it is eligible, you can invest, and the investments have to be in either real estate or a business within an actual qualified opportunity zone. So what is an opportunity zone? Well, when you invest in it, so let me go to this one. I did this last night, very late. So there's 8,700 opportunity zones nationwide. They were, when the law passed, the governors all selected sites that they felt would be great opportunity zones. It was sent into the Department of Treasury, who then made a ruling and published the final list of opportunity zones. It's about 300 in Pennsylvania. We have 4 in Chester County. And what an opportunity zone is a census tract where there's low income, poverty, and needs help with economic development. The 4 opportunity zones in Chester County are all in the city of Coatesville. They are the major contiguous census tracts within Coatesville, extending up 82 to the bypass. Go back for a second here. So, investing in the opportunity zone for the actual investors where the benefit is. So it's an opportunity to defer capital gains tax, reduce that same tax, and then avoid, not evade, taxes on the investment you actually make. Right? Avoids the good kind, evades the bad kinds. It's the only thing I remember from college. Basically, if you have a capital gain, a business or an individual, regardless of how that capital gain came. If it's a federally, the IRS says that's capital gain. It could be real estate, it could be stocks. If you invest that gain within the opportunity zone, you defer payment of the tax due on that capital gain until the earlier of the end of 2036 or when you exit from that investment in the opportunity zone. If you hold that investment for at least 5 years, your tax on that capital gain you invested is reduced by 10%. If you hold it for at least 7 years, it's reduced by another 5% to a total of 15%. But the big benefit for an investor in an opportunity zone is if you hold that investment for 10 years, any capital gain on that investment disappears. At the time you withdraw, if you've held for 10 years, or the end of 2036, there is actually a mechanism in place. It will be an IRS form, surprise, but it's only a one-pager. You will mark your basis up to the current fair market value of that investment. So anything you make between the time of your investment and when you exit after 10 years or 2036 is tax-free. And that is the big kicker here. So there's the map, City of Coatesville. This doesn't work on that screen, we get something different. But it's most of the city, and it's a real good opportunity. So what kind of investments are there? Like I said, you can invest in business, or you can invest in real estate. The wording in the rules say property. Property doesn't mean real estate. That's where a lot of people's minds go. But you can invest in a business. And it has to substantially improve the property, the business or real estate you invest in. That substantial improvement test is basically a doubling of the basis that was in that entity, net of any land costs for real estate. So if your basis in an apartment building that somebody has owned for 20 years, they cash out some stock, want to invest, expand, rehab that apartment building, they would have to double the basis of that property. For new real estate projects, you're starting out with zero basis because you're just getting involved in the real estate, so that's an easier test to meet. Okay, the investment that you make must be in the form of equity. So you can't take your capital gain and lend it to a business or lend it against a building. You actually have to be an owner in that. There's no owner percentage guidelines. You can be preferred stock ownership, it can be ownership in an LLC, but it's important to know that this has to be a true at-risk equity investment, and you should know that you have to invest the capital gain, not just the taxable portion. So if you have a $1,000 capital gain, you invest that whole $1,000, you're risking that $800 that you would normally have put in your pocket after paying the taxes. It has to be at risk as equity. So just a quick, brief summary on Coatesville, because that is our only opportunity zone. We really want to try to see if we can drive some investment in there. There's going to be enough of the big glitzy nationwide investments like the gigantic skyscrapers that are going to go up in the Bronx and things like that, but we want to try to keep some of this money home locally and help Coatesville out. So it is a third-class city officially in Pennsylvania. All the infrastructure is there already. There's water, sewer, electric at every street level. We have a city manager and a city council that I've met with, very, very amenable to assisting and helping. They like to call it their green tape as opposed to red tape. They are willing to work on zoning issues and get them taken care of and facilitate growth in the city. This is probably one of the bigger ones that's coming. This is the new train station area, and this is the plan for development. And right now, Gary and I met with a gentleman very interested in putting apartments up because the new train platform will be right here. The 4th Street and the 3rd Street streetscapes have already been redone. We're looking at 120 units of apartment buildings with a parking garage, dedicated parking garage next to it that will also provide parking for the train station. That's going to be a great project. The project at 82 and 30 is going to be a good project. We're going to start working on the financing to get the restaurant open this year down there. And there's many, many more things going on in town right now. And with that, just a basic overview. If you need more information, please let me know. I know we did, what, 2.5 hours on this in the middle of December.
We have about 4 potential projects that are pending, so if you can have capital gains exposure, Patty was talking about those pennies and paying all that tax. There's opportunities to offset some of that here, right here in Chester County. We're creating a Chester County Opportunity Fund, so those of you out there have accountants, attorneys, other advisors who are looking at your financial affairs, financial planners, and please contact Chris, and we will be glad to help look at those opportunities. So real quickly, we're going to have Mary Beth come up and talk a little bit, and Patrick Halakaya, who is a new folk that we want to bring to the council.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Beth DiVincenzo, and I'm going to focus this morning on the workforce side of the house. If you've heard Gary or I speak to community groups, every business needs three things: financing solutions, the infrastructure, which we heard about here, and buildings, and most importantly, your workforce or your employees. So if you leave with anything today on the workforce side of the house, remember this: workforce development is economic development. So I'm going to highlight a couple of the trends and the challenges that we see locally and what we're attempting to do to solve those. So the first of the four, and most importantly, are the continued advancements in technology, whether it's AI or cybersecurity or robotics. It's impacting everyone's business across all industries. Let me give you a couple of stats. Tech alone makes up 4 to 7% of the region's workers. Of that, tech is the top growth sector, creating 25,000 jobs, or equivalent to 25% of all net job growth since the year 2000. They're estimating that in the next 10 years, 26,000 to 44,000 openings will be in IT, and impacted especially by the retirement of our existing workers. And lastly, in cyber alone, there was a study done in 2017 that shows that they're anticipating 2,600 to 4,400 tech job openings in cyber alone every year for the next 10 years. So those advancements in tech are hitting our workforce right now. The second issue facing us is the shortage of workers. So if you're looking at that growth, and we currently have a shortage of workers, the impact is going to be significant. That's due in part to tech, but it's also due in part to the career preparation that's currently happening within all aspects of our education and training. The third, pending reforms in healthcare, or the impact of mental health across all of our industries. We had a group come together recently that talked about mental health being the #1 issue facing our companies. And the fourth one that I'll mention is affordable housing. You know, we hear a lot about the fortunate aspects of Chester County and our region, and that's great, but it also then lends itself to some difficulties around affordable housing, where our workers may end up living in counties a lot further away, and they're impacted by the ride to our work areas. So the good news, those were the challenges. The good news, and since 2007, Chester County and our region has worked collaboratively with business, education, workforce, and economic development. I see many of you in the room that participate in our industry partnerships. If you do, could you raise your hand? So we have several of you here that are the heads of what we call industry partnerships. One in ag, one in IT and communications, one in advanced manufacturing, healthcare and the life sciences, and energy. So those are 5 we consider our high priority industries. It doesn't exclude the others, but those are considered the high priority industries. In those 5 industry groups that come together on a routine basis to address those challenges, last year more than 6,000 people from our organizations in our region participated in those activities. With the help of more than 900 volunteers, and with financial support from both our Commonwealth and our local workforce development boards here in Chester County. So what are we doing about those things within those groups? I'll mention 3 this morning. Talked about the shortage of workers and the impact of tech. The #1 issue that we get asked for by an employer is help me with upskilling my current workforce, or what we call incumbent worker training. There are currently grants coming from multiple sources to help your organizations upskill your workers. And if it's in technology, it's an easy one. So you're gonna hear from Patrick Hayakawa in a minute. If any of your organizations have that need or any training need, please see us. The second, and this is critical, we call career exploration or pipeline development. What are we doing preparing our students for the jobs in your companies or these tech jobs, if you would? There are numerous things going on. I can tell you there are at least 10 initiatives underway to address career exploration, taking students outside the schools, putting them in your companies, so that they can get a better understanding of what the real job is. And we have a number of students graduating from college with degrees that don't fit their jobs. So we're now working with K through college systems to better prepare them for that work. It's usually hands-on. Last year, more than 4,300 students were participating in those activities. And I'd like to mention 3 of them because they are critical. Manufacturing is facing a huge shortage in addition to technology. We currently have a very large initiative called What's So Cool About Manufacturing. They're taking groups of middle school students, putting them in your workplace to video interview your workers, find out what's so cool about manufacturing, with the hopes that we've generated their interest early enough that their career interest and path will lead to manufacturing. It's a great project. If you're a manufacturer and want to participate, let me know. I think we currently have 16 schools and 16 companies. The second, and is passionate for me, is something called Girls Exploring Tomorrow's Technology. It's in its 19th year. First year we worked with 50 students. Last year we worked with more than 970 girls. They're in grades 5 through 10. We have about 75 companies that come together to do hands-on activities with the girls. Extracting DNA from a strawberry, building roller coasters with marbles and tubes, and of course the highlight is having Sikorsky flying an S-76, helicopter, piloted by 2 female pilots. That's a great opportunity if you have a family member or know some girl that might be interested, and it leads to a career in technology. Last thing I'll mention for careers, last year we introduced new academies. They're week-long immersions of students in those areas, healthcare, tech, manufacturing. So the opportunities are there for us to build our pipeline of workers. Last thing that I'll mention that we're doing is we're working on the recruiting and hiring. Anybody know what the percentage success rate is for a person who's looking for a job on a computer? Indeed, Monster, Career Builder, anybody? Almost. I heard
Less than 10.
it's around 12.
Okay.
12%. But everybody we know in this workforce development arena, they sit down in front of the computer and look for a job. And we post our jobs there. We are working on networking. I know that sounds simple, but that's the best way you get a job. I get a call routinely, know anybody that could fill this job. I reach out to people, know anybody that could fill this job. The one program that is new is something we call Hire One, Refer One. It has 2 parts to it. Hire One, Refer One. In these industry groups, let's say tech, we talked about this last night. If I have a job opening and I'm looking for a software developer and I have 100 people apply, I narrow it down to 10, I interview 5 finalists, 1 job. What do I do with the other 4? We are now asking you to come in and share it with the industry partners that you're working with collectively to get them employed. So that what is a disconnect between a job and a job seeker, hopefully we're narrowing that gap. The other piece, and if you would like to participate in this, is we are putting job seekers in front of boards within the community. Our own board, chamber boards, it can be anyone's board. And they're prepared to give you their elevator speech with the hopes that you may or may not have a job, but you may know somebody else that needs that person. So as you can see, we have a number of things going on in the workforce arena. And what do I want you to remember? Workforce development is economic development. Thank you.
Patrick, got about 30 seconds to talk.
30 seconds, all right, here we go. Hi, everybody, I'm Patrick Hayakawa, Vice President of Innovation and Emerging Technologies with CCEDC. When we talk about the innovation culture in Chester County, we're talking about, is Chester County the most fertile territory possible to start and grow and operate a new company? In particular, we're talking about those technology-based ideas. Is this a place where you can come up with a new idea, form a company around that idea, grow a team, raise money, and turn that into a commercially viable product? As you all know, these tend to be generally high-risk ventures, right? But high risk eventually becomes into high growth if everything goes right, and eventually high dividends for not just the company, but for the local economy. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about innovation culture. In a nutshell, we think that 2019 is going to be a good year to be a startup in Chester County. We continue to enjoy some macro level conditions that make it good for entrepreneurs. These are things like our highly educated workforce, right? These are things like a robust system of higher education, which are a hotbed of new ideas, new energy and resources for the entrepreneurs. And we continue to enjoy pretty robust access to capital for those early stage companies. In addition to those macro conditions, there are a few recent developments in the last 4 to 6 months that are also really positive. So these are things like, excuse me, things like Venture Chesco, which is a recent partnership between the County of Chester and Ben Franklin Technology Partners, where each party has agreed to throw in $2 million for a total of $4 million pot that is specifically dedicated to seed funding of startups in the Chester County region. This is something that we've never had before, so it's an extra incentive for companies to operate here, and it's an extra resource that we can leverage more money and ultimately help those companies put the ball down the field. A second really positive development is the county's investment of $100,000 in CCEDC's own Ideas and Innovation Network. This is a program that's been around for a while, but is continuing to see new growth and new popularity. So just at the end of the year, we were able to announce that our KIZ fund, which I2N operates, KIZ is the Keystone Innovation Zone, resulted in over $1.2 million in 2019 alone for our pipeline of emerging companies. That's non-dilutive funding, cash right to those companies, or sellable tax credits, in other words, which in turn becomes cash to fund those operations. So in addition, I think that $100,000 is going to allow the Ideas and Innovation Network to continue to deepen our interaction with those companies and make sure they have the resources that they need. Lastly, a positive trend is I mentioned higher education. Our partners at Westchester University, Penn State Great Valley, continuing to have a deeper commitment and investment in how they can spin out tech transfer and be a resource. So one example would be just in December, we hosted an event called the Angel Venture Fair Workshop. We had 80 entrepreneurs come in, talk to a panel of angel investors, learning, what do you want to see in my pitch? How do I connect with you? How do I connect with the other resources in Chester County, whether it's our skilled professional services, accountants, attorneys, intellectual property attorneys, people that can help grow these ventures, right? So we had Ben Franklin on a panel, and a director there, Mark Traybold. Ben Franklin Technology Partners, you might know, is responsible for seed investment for the entire southeastern Pennsylvania region, not just Chester County. Mark said on the panel, we didn't pay him to say this, he said, between Venture Chesco, between Ideas and Innovation Network, and some other things going on, he said, there's no Collier County, there's no suburban region doing more to support innovation than Chester County. So that was a real, I think, endorsement for what's going on here, and we're excited. So, another forecast that everyone's here, Eagles by 7.
Managing partner for the CCO, which is our 504 affiliate.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I get to actually introduce my news in my introduction. So I'm Sherwood Robbins, and like Gary said, I'm the managing director here at CCO PA and CCO DE. So our news is we are actually recently approved by Washington, D.C., SBA, prior to the holiday season, through a process to actually go into and work with economic development loan programs in the state of Delaware. So we're really excited about that. Any introductions, people that you know, benefits that borrowers, business owners can have from economic development loan programs in Delaware, please give us a call, any one of us. Definitely want to talk about that. So that's really exciting news. It did take a process, and it kind of segues into my second piece. Basically is we are in government shutdown, so let's not mince words about that. However, we keep the ball rolling, keep the train moving, and I get to use a football analogy in a second. So what we're doing is working with borrowers as we speak. We're continuing to build that package. We cannot submit it for approval at this point, but I'm going to use the RPO. Everybody knows the RPO, the run pass option. There's a fiscal agent for the SBA. A fiscal agent called Eagle Compliance actually takes, in the SBA 504 program, the investment out to the capital markets. It's not a pass, it's actually a run. The handoff's been made, the running back's got it. Eagle Compliance actually has January's funding, which actually goes out now as we speak for January. February's actually taken care of as well. So we had a loan closing this week that will get funded in February because it's actually out of the hands, even though the agency shut down via the shutdown. The Eagle Compliance, the fiscal agent, is actually taking that out. Now, stay tuned for the future, but what we're doing and what we're telling our borrowers, a little reassuring, is the commercial loan purchase process, if you're a business and buying your own commercial property, it's naturally going to take some time and it's got a window. So let's not suspend that, let's keep working. Let's keep working, let's get that package together. Last thing that I have for you is just another great number. In July of 2018, just this year, the SBA came out with a 25-year fixed rate option. 25 years, fixed for the life of the loan. That rate came out last month at 4.99%, fixed for the entire life of the loan. So rates are great right now. So you do hear some optimism in our voice. We just expanded. We get to help more small business owners than we did even yesterday. The rates are still there. It's a good opportunity. It's a good time to continue to buy commercial real estate and expand for business. Thanks for coming today.
Delaware. 50% of the revenues that support this organization comes through CECO, okay, or the financing program. That's why it's important. That's why we provide these economic services. And we only go where we're invited. We didn't go into Delaware because we just thought we want to be a bigger player. We're invited by the governor. We're invited by other communities. We're invited by a 140-year-old organization in the state of Delaware that says, can you come help us do what you do in Chester County? This is a model. I think Patty mentioned it well. We are so blessed to live in this community. We have government, we have elected officials, we have private businesses like yourself, all working together to enhance and grow this economy. We only take less than 6% of our operating budget from public sources. We take a lot of pride in that. Your board you elect here takes a lot of pride in that. We work very, very hard with your investment into this organization. So thank you for your time, your treasure, your ideas, everything that makes this a special, special place. So I want to thank you for that. God bless everybody for 2019. Thank you for coming. Sorry to keep you.